at any point. The purpose of this hearing is to receive testimony on the Biden-Harris border policies and how they have undermined the safety and security of America. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. President Joe Biden, his appointed border czar, Vice President Kamala Harris, and Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas have sparked the worst border crisis in American history. Looking back over the nearly 4 years, Americans have witnessed a national security, public safety, and humanitarian disaster at our borders. And every day, we continue to feel its devastating consequences. The flood of inadmissible aliens across our sovereign border has been unprecedented. Since Biden-Harris' first full month in office, Customs and Border Protection has recorded more than 10.3 million encounters of inadmissible aliens nationwide, compared to 3.1 million between fiscal years 2017 and 2020. In addition, there have been more than 2 million known gotaways on their watch, illegal aliens who are at large in our communities, whose intentions and backgrounds are completely unknown. Encounters at our ports of entry have exploded from roughly 1 million between fiscal 2017 and 2020 to more than 3 million since the start of fiscal year 2021. That's largely because the Biden-Harris administration has devised a host of unlawful mass parole programs that encourage otherwise inadmissible aliens to cross at our land, sea, and airports instead of between them. This solves the terrible
how to eat white rice and stay thin
problem of overcrowded Border Patrol facilities and overwhelmed agents, but instead of between them. This solves the terrible optics problem of overcrowded Border Patrol facilities and overwhelmed agents, but the end result is the same: tens of thousands of inadmissible aliens released into the interior of the country every month against the laws passed by this institution. It's just a shell game, a sleight of hand to skew the numbers. It's like when a parent tells their children to clean their room, only to find the mess simply moved from the floor to the closet. Things might look cleaner, but the underlying problem has not been addressed. So it is with the Biden-Harris administration's border policies. Other numbers further highlight this crisis. Tragically, roughly 200,000 Americans have died from fentanyl that has been smuggled across the southwest border by criminal cartels. Border Patrol arrests of illegal aliens with criminal backgrounds have more than doubled on the Biden-Harris watch, from around 22,000 to more than 53,000. Apprehensions of Chinese nationals crossing the southwest border illegally exceed 36,000 just this fiscal year, more than FY07 through 20 combined. These are major national security and public safety concerns. This unprecedented surge across our borders was made possible by the Biden-Harris administration. In 2019 and 2020, Biden and Harris both declared they supported decriminalizing border crossings. Biden said that suspected criminal illegal aliens arrested by local law enforcement should not be handed over to ICE, contrary to the law. Harris called building more border wall systems, quote, a stupid use of money, end quote. Biden encouraged illegal aliens to surge to our border, his word, to flood our asylum system with illegitimate claims. Their open borders and anti-enforcement rhetoric soon became a reality. Upon assuming office, Biden-Harris worked immediately to end effective border security policies and to dismantle decades of bipartisan immigration enforcement. For example, Biden and Harris have gutted detention. For example, in fiscal year 2013, the Obama administration detained 91% of all illegal aliens, 82% of them from the time they were encountered until the case was resolved. In Biden and Harris's first year in office, that 82% dropped to just 10%. Removals have also plummeted from more than 267,000 in fiscal year 2019 to around half that number last year and as low as 59,000 in fiscal year 21. Even worse, removal of criminal aliens plummeted from around 173,000 in fiscal year 2019 to just 70,000 last fiscal year. And just yesterday, Prominent border correspondent Ali Bradley reported exclusive ICE figures showing that since Biden-Harris administration ended Title 42 in May 23, the administration has only removed around 23% of all inadmissible aliens encountered. Despite the limitations put on them by the leaders, the men and women of CBP and ICE have continued to perform their jobs above and beyond the call of duty, and I commend them for their unwavering service to the nation. Yet they know it's not supposed to be this way. Today, you will no doubt hear more blame shifting and excuses by my colleagues across the aisle, but all of it is meant to mislead. You'll probably hear about the recent drop in illegal border crossings between ports of entry along our southwest border. However, this does not account for the thousands of inadmissible aliens coming in daily through the ports of entry under the scheme I described earlier, nor does it undo the damage done by the millions that have come in over the past 3.5 years. This evidence also suggests no connection between Biden's recent loophole-ridden executive order and these new numbers, but rather stepped up interior enforcement by Mexico. And as we saw recently, that enforcement is waning, with the Mexican government now busing CBP-1 appointment holders from the southern Mexico border straight to the southern U.S. border. Coming almost 4 years into this self-inflicted crisis, the administration's action is much too little and far too late. For numerous families across the country, like those of Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, Joycelyn Nagunri, the damage will never be undone. You certainly won't hear how the Senate's border bill, which just a single Republican helped write, would have made the crisis worse. It would have only allowed tough restrictions once encounters passed several thousand per day, mandated mass releases through non-custodial detention, improperly expanded the use of parole, and more. We'll get it played here. Hopefully they'll figure that out.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you, Ms. Morin. I now recognize Mr. Desmond for 5 minutes to summarize his opening statement.
2024. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak today. From September of 2023 to June of 2024, over 155,000 adult, prominently males, were between the ages of 18 to 35 who crossed our border illegally, were bused and dropped onto the streets of San Diego County. That's an average of almost 600 per day, 7 days a week for 9 months. No community, no county, no country can sustain that type of an invasion of people crossing our borders illegally and being released into our communities without proper screening or vetting. I saw firsthand large vans and buses driven by Border Patrol agents pull into a San Diego County transit station and unload hundreds of people at a time. People who had just hours ago illegally crossed our borders, stepped off a shuttle and were free to go into our communities, ahead of anyone legally trying to enter our country. The first question for many people that I approached at the transit stations was, where am I? And how do I get to Virginia, New York, or Denver? In Jacumba, California, a small border community about 50 miles east of San Diego, I came upon an early morning encampment of approximately 50 people who illegally crossed the border the night before. They were waiting for the Border Patrol to pick them up and process them, and then potentially be dropped in our streets. One man from India, traveling with his friends, said he paid $8,000 to an entity in India for the unimpeded passage across our southern border. That same morning in Jacumba, a Border Patrol agent told us that a group was coming across the border within the next half an hour. Soon, a black Suburban on the Mexico side of our broken fence sped across a dirt road, stopped, and dropped off about a dozen people, and then sped away. Men, women, and children wearing backpacks and pulling luggage crossed our border illegally, merely walking through a hole in the fence, approached the Border Patrol agent and asked for asylum. Our Border Patrol has been reduced to processing agents, standing by, watching people break our laws. One officer told me with deep frustration that his orders from the federal government were clear: stand down, do not engage, just process. What's more alarming is what my team saw later was dozens of Chinese nationals dragging luggage down dirt roads at night. And this is not an isolated incident. This is a daily reality in San Diego County. Border Patrol has become their Uber driver from the border into the city of San Diego, and San Diego County has become their nationwide travel agents at the taxpayers' expense. San Diego County itself, we spent $6 million to set up a migrant receiving center to assist those dropped here, to move them more quickly to other parts of the country. These were local dollars that could have been spent on roads, infrastructure, and parks. Migrants slept in San Diego Airport. They stay in our homeless shelters, and our hospital and healthcare systems are strained. But what concerns me even more is our safety as a community and a country. Border Patrol agents do not have the time or resources or the ability to properly vet millions coming across our borders.
And our community is very safe. Crime rates are low. All the protocols with everything to do with the border are unclear. This is something Congress needs to define, make these hard decisions. And the asylum program is not the answer. Asylum was meant to be a little piece of the pie of Title VIII, for rare circumstances. Asylum, it's become the de facto way of issuing work permits, but asylum seekers can't even work for the first 6 months they're in the country. Canada is smart, and they've realized, hey, they've imported tens of thousands of cleared asylum seekers into Canada to work there because they can't work here. They have the same problem we do. They have an aging population, they lack younger workers, and they've taken advantage of this kind of broken system to get more workers into their country. So I want to keep my 5 minutes simple here. Two clear takeaways that I think Congress needs to do so that the executive branch isn't incentivized to take action. One is a guest worker program. Make that clear, articulate that, figure that out. Consider things like the Farm Modernization Act that has languished for years. There has been pressure from the business community on both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat, to pass the Farm Modernization Act that would allow more H-2A agricultural visas. My family is a ranching family. We've been in the border of Arizona for 5 generations. It was a lot easier for my grandfather to hire somebody from Mexico if American workers weren't available. But now it's unclear what the protocols are for getting work permits. Another thing that's needed, and this was in the bipartisan border bill that wasn't passed, is immigration judges right at the border. And this was in the bill. There were some things in that bill I did not agree with. But if we're going to be, infatuated with the idea everyone needs a piece of paper to approve before they can do a voluntary interaction with an American, well, get the officials right at the border that can make those decisions. The bipartisan border bill actually had in it the paralegals, the immigration judges, and the staff so that people can come up to the border, present their piece of paper, make their claim, and if the answer is yes, it's yes. If the answer is no, it's no. And this is not a Democrat versus Republican issue. In the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, you had record years, over 1 million. This included Democrat and Republican administrations, and then there was a 14-year lull after that included all 8 years of Obama, last 2 years of Bush Jr., and all 4 years of Trump. So this is a cyclical thing, and I think it's disingenuous to try to paint it as a Democrat versus Republican thing. My time's up, so thank you.
Thank you. Members will be recognized by order of seniority. You said that word got out and then the masses came, essentially. I'm paraphrasing you. But 5 minutes of questioning. An additional round of questioning may be called after all members have been recognized. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. Mr. Heike, you served as the last job, you were the sector chief of one of our 9 southwest border sectors. And I think you said you worked for 25 years in the Border Patrol under 5 different administrations. And in looking at your statement, you said this was the first time under 5 administrations, whether through neglect or on purpose, I saw large-scale lapses in our ability to return people to their country of origin. You then went on and talked about detention and how detention bed space was intentionally decreased and private detention was essentially done away with. You said that that word got out and then the masses came, essentially. I'm paraphrasing you. But I want to go back to your comment about whether it was neglectful or purposeful, because if you intentionally stop returning people, that's not something you just, oh, well, you neglect. And you intentionally decrease detention, those things that actually decrease the incentive for people to come here. That sounds purposeful to me. So would you answer? I mean, do you think it's neglect, or do you think this was purposeful, designed to be this way?
If you want to slim down, you should skip breakfast. True or false?
The idea of breakfast was actually a bunch of marketing ploys. Until they
I believe that the actions were purposeful, yes, sir. Many people don't understand that we can't simply fill a plane full of nationals from a certain country and fly them home. It takes agreements with that country. It takes diplomacy with the State Department to make those arrangements. And they're long-term arrangements. It takes diplomacy over months and years.
But purposeful.
But purposeful.
Purposeful, okay. So you mentioned, too, that there were massive periods of time when the border was just left completely open because the agents had to be pulled and you were directed to do this. And how long were those agents just completely off the border and miles of the border wide open?
There were weeks and even months at a time between Texas and parts of Arizona and California.
And I assume that's, we want to look at these 8 ISIS folks that were caught in New York. I guess some of them actually crossed at a crossing. They filled out the CBP-1 app, 3 of them, and came into the country and were going to blow up an LGBTQ place in Philadelphia. But, I mean, those people that crossed during that time, any guarantees that they're not out there to do harm to the country?
No, sir, no guarantees.
Yeah, you agree with the FBI director then. You mentioned twice in your testimony, too, I find it fascinating that because it was overwhelming San Diego, the administration actually created, for the cost of $150,000, plane flights to Texas of all these people as a way to keep it quiet. And then you mentioned, too, there was one point where you had like 2,000 aliens and the administration directed you to like move them out of sight of the media. Can you kind of clarify that a little bit?
Yes, sir. Groups were coming in to turn themselves over faster than we could keep up. We only had so much space. We keep people within our stations. There's no other place to put them in while they're being processed. And they were building up. The media was showing them sitting in between the fences, and it looked bad, and they wanted them moved. I had no place to put them, and so they simply told me—
Why would they want to hide that? Why wouldn't they want the world to know what's going on? Why would they want to hide that? Why would they want to spend $150,000 to fly them to Texas to keep people from seeing the mass waves? Why?
It looks bad. When I asked about the flights to Texas, I was very specifically told there's a problem in Texas, there isn't a problem in California.
Wow. So purposeful policies wreaking havoc on a community, and we'll just hide it. Perfect. Thank you. Ms. Moran, you've previously said that President Biden hasn't really showed any concern for anything the American people have voiced on this issue. It's like he's sitting in an ivory tower and we're just down here. He's not connected with the everyday person. Can you talk more about your frustrations with the administration and their handling of the border?
Yes. Since my daughter's death, but also since we learned that it was an illegal immigrant that they've accused of murdering her, the Biden-Harris administration has not reached out to our family to offer condolences. And I've noticed that when speaking about the border policy, they would rather look in the other direction, kind of like a little kid. You know, if I don't see you, you don't see me. And I think that they are trying to avoid admitting that there is an issue, even though tens of thousands of people a day, women and children, are being attacked. Not all of them are in the news because some of them are not being murdered, they're just being attacked. I have people come up to me all the time because I know I'm Rachel's mom, and they'll say, you know, a guy came up from behind me, grabbed me around the neck, and tried to pull me down to the ground. But I got away, and I went to the police, and I told the police, and when they arrested the person, they found out that he had already attacked several other women. So it's happening on a daily basis. Not all of it is in the news. And so this issue is bigger than people think. And it's not just the southern border, because we're almost 2,000 miles from the southern border. It's every state, every county, every city. People are living in fear. And just because you ignore it and don't acknowledge it doesn't mean that it's not true.
Thank you. I yield to the ranking member for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff Hathaway, can you expound a little more on how you see the use of people coming to this country being integrated into the economy of our country, and whether or not you've seen a positive impact from there coming to this country?
Yes, definitely. I'd be glad to. The people coming across are coming across to work. They're not coming as an invasion to import an army, to have a secret army embedded in the